Welcome to the Return on Lifestyle podcast with Ray Descalzo from Privada Wealth Management. In this podcast, we help you overcome financial worries and make sense of planning, investing, insurance, and banking. Join us for this journey as Ray draws from his expertise and interviews brilliant minds to help you enjoy life. The best is yet to come.
Hello and welcome to the Return on Lifestyle podcast with Ray Descalzo from Privada Wealth Management. Today's episode is titled Retire with Why. Good morning, Ray. How are you?
If I were any better, they'd call me Eric Johnson.
Oh, hey, I know that guy. Great guitar player.
True.
Not personally, but the other one is. So, all right, Retire with Why. What is the motivation behind this title?
You know, it's funny. My daughter goes to school, and the whole school curriculum is based, even at K4, is based upon a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. When I was in college, I picked the book up because someone said it was going to be a good book to read. And one of the chapters, one of those main successful habits, is to begin with the end in mind. Fast forward to about a year ago, and I see a book on a watch list of some people that I like that says by Simon Sinek, Sinek. And it's Start With Why, kind of the same concept. Begin with the end in mind, start with why. And he goes and talks about companies like Apple and great companies and great endeavors. And all great endeavors, they start with why. And I got to thinking about it and thinking about, the happiest retirees and the happiest investors. Those are the ones who do so with purpose. They're driven by purpose, and they're motivated by what gets them up in the morning, the why they get up in the morning, the why they do what they do. And, Eric, in this business, it's not just about what you do or how you do it, this fund, this amount, this return. It's why. Why are you learning? Why are you motivated? Why are you focused?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Having the end in mind, there's got to be a reason that you want A, B, or C, whatever that is, and then making those steps to get to that point and reminding yourself why that was so important to you.
That's exactly right. And so today I want to talk a little bit about, what gets me motivated, and also what I see helps get my clients motivated, what helps them focus on their why.
Great. Sounds good. Where do we start?
Well, first of all, I wanted to share, and I may have shared this before, and I've shared it with a lot of folks that I've met with, and that's why I got into the business. What kind of motivates me, it is what motivates me, and what gets me up in the morning, gets me excited about the job. 1987, 1988, I don't remember exactly when it was, but I was in 7th or 8th grade, and I'm a doctor's kid. In fact, my father still is a doctor. And so as a doctor's kid, I kind of just was, sauntering through life, no concept of responsibility, maybe even a little bit spoiled. And my father called me into his office and took off his glasses. He was working on taxes or something like that, and said, "Ray, we have to tighten the belt." No concept what that meant. Mm-hmm. And I could see the look on his face, and I said, "There's something kind of different about this conversation that we're having right now. This is a meaning of money moment for me." And it turned out that it was something that I would remember. Long story short, he had been given some subpar advice, and it had caused a tax issue for him back in 1988 or so. And that concern, that lack of clarity for him, really kind of I remembered it. I remembered it even when I began in this business in 2005 of helping people with their finances, helping people with getting to retirement. And it has motivated me because I remember how he felt, the lack of clarity, the concern, the distress. My father, he's a successful person, but finance and investing are not his primary objectives. He was born in the Philippines, came over as a doctor, worked really hard and did a really good job. And now I feel like it's my job to help folks like that are busy, that are making money, and want to make the right decisions. And I want to save them as much as I possibly can from those kinds of moments and that kind of an experience that he had.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same as you don't do your own surgeries. You go to the expert because they take care of that. They take care of the education that they've received. They take care of knowing what to do and how to do it, and then they execute and help you to live a better life because of it. And it's
exactly
reverse that role. Yeah, that's great. All right. So what gets you motivated?
What gets me motivated is a couple different things. First of all, I've got a different kind of mindset than perhaps most folks out there. Eric, do you remember where you were when you first were aware of what happened on that fateful morning, September 11, 2001?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. I was
Yeah.
in my living room, and at that point, my wife and I were working with at-risk youth, and I had 8 teenage boys upstairs that were getting ready, and we were going to have a conversation about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That is really deep. I mean, it's one of those moments for us. It's like the JFK assassination. It's something that you remember where you were.
Mm-hmm.
And from that time forward, everything kind of changed for us here in the United States of America. Later on down the road, there were congressional hearings. And Condoleezza Rice said, you know what, we weren't on a war footing. We weren't on a war footing, so we weren't expecting our antenna was not up. The reason I share that is because I feel like when it comes to financial planning, people have this goal. And unfortunately, I'm going to break it down to you, Eric, and to all of our listeners. This goal is kind of a myth. And that myth is financial peace. Now, I know that doesn't sound good because there are actual people who write books about financial peace and have radio shows about financial peace. And I'm here to tell you it's a myth. The reason it's a myth is because finances are always changing. Things are always in flux. And I'm not just talking about the stock market volatility. I'm talking about politics. I'm talking about the number one concern that you have when it comes to your financial plan. Would you guess for me what you think the biggest impediment that you have, Eric, to financial peace? What do you think that impediment might be?
Debt or running out of money in retirement, for sure.
Good answers. Good answers. I would say one step before that, it's our own selves. So the debt you talked about, where did that come from? It came from consumerism.
Correct.
It came from a mentality of, hey, I can use this credit card. Now, why did I use that credit card and get myself into so much debt? Perhaps I wasn't on a war footing. And when you talk about debt, that's actually a great point, because national debt, personal debt are things that we have slipped into, like frogs in hot water on a personal level or on a national level. And that's why there's no such thing as financial peace. You have to have your guard up. You have to always be looking out, because there are those out there, caveat emptor, who are seeking to devour, and you mentioned credit card debt, a great example of why we have to be on a war footing. And so I think that's one thing that motivates me. I don't look at financial planning as sort of this passive, boring, here's where you are now, here's where you need to be in the future, you put this money away, have a nice day. I really believe it's about educating people about the dangers, and we'll cover that in episodes going forward. And in the episodes that we're going to have here in the future, I'll cover the things that are out there that are the enemies of our financial peace. They are what we're going to war with. And we'll break those down. But I want to make sure that we get that mindset, because that's what motivates me. And when I see the light come on with my clients, first of all, it's kind of, I don't know what the word is. It's almost kind of like a bummer, What do you mean financial peace is a myth? Don't I ever get there? The reality of it is there's no peace without what? Vigilance, And so when it comes to your finances, that's how it works as well. And so that mindset of a financial war, of being on the offense and always being aware, is something that motivates me in a really big way.
That's fantastic.
The other issue is, I think that motivates me, is that too many people are taking one-size-fits-all advice. A good example of this would be when you're a kid and they're teaching you how to write and read and arithmetic. They say I before E except after C. I can't think of one word where that applies. I'm not very good spelling, but, I before E except after C. You have these rules of thumb, if you will, when it comes to finances, and everybody has these different ideas. That's fine. Don't get me wrong. But you mentioned debt. Okay, that's a great example. So credit card debt, I think you and I can agree that credit card debt's a pretty terrible idea.
Yes.
But, and let's keep on going with that, student loan debt. I mean, student loan debt right now is a hot topic, and we're going to cover student loan debt and the problems that it presents to us, not just as a individual, but as a country, what student loan debt is going to be doing to us for some time to come. But that's a whole nother issue for us to talk about. But then you look at, say, for instance, your mortgage. Okay. And a lot of folks out there have a one-size-fits-all financial plan when it comes to their mortgage. Oh, I'm going to do a 15-year, and here's why. I'm going to do a 30-year, and here's why. The key is you have to look at the data as it applies to you. And so what motivates me, one of the things that motivates me, is helping people take these rules of thumb, this conventional wisdom, turn it upside down, shake it, and see if it still works for them. And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. And I want to help people understand these rules of thumb and apply them to their particular life. There's a lot of gurus out there, and they've got some great things to say. I want to make sure that we take the very best of the best of the best, apply it to each individual person, because there's no one size fits all financial plan.
Absolutely.
There's no list of 8 things that you do and you're guaranteed. There are no guarantees. It's a conversation. Well, I put it to you this way. Mike Tyson says it best. He says, everybody has a plan until they get what?
Punched in the face.
Punched in the face. Yes, exactly.
Yep.
Eric, have you ever been punched in the face?
We are not going to talk about that on this podcast, but I would say that there's a good high likely that I have been in the past. Yes.
Yeah.
Not lately, thankfully.
I've never been punched in the face by a human being who punched me in the face, but I have once or twice taken a volleyball, football, basketball right to the noggin. And it's not as much fun as it sounds like it is. And when life happens, we have to make sure that we've got somebody there to help us figure out what are we going to do next. And that can be a lot of different financial punches to the face. Mm-hmm. And so that financial plan, that retirement plan that's based upon conventional wisdom, it needs to be looked at again. And that gets me excited to talk to people and help disabuse them of the wrong things and reinforce the things that make sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing that gets me going and gets me excited is when I give second opinions. One of the things that is important to my practice is what I call a second opinion service. Mm-hmm. And in the second opinion service, we run through the first 2 steps, if you will, of the stability planning process that I go through with my clients. And part of that is taking a look at what they are invested in and getting a good understanding of where they are. As you can imagine, I see a lot of different things come across my desk as we're doing some analysis. And what I've noticed is there are a lot of great financial planners out there. I call them dolphins. Dolphins are, I'm here in Central Florida, mm-hmm. Okay? And so we've got SeaWorld, we've got all kinds of different parks. And if you just go to the beach, sometimes you'll be staying in your hotel room, you'll look out the window and you'll see dolphins frolicking in the distance. Mm-hmm. Awesome, right?
Yeah, that's great.
It is. It's fantastic. The bad part when you're out there at the beach is when you see sharks. And apparently we're getting some great white sharks here, which is always kind of fun.
Oh, yeah, that's not good.
Sure. And not far from where I live is one of the hotbeds for shark bites, typically little bitty sharks that are confused and probably hungry. Mm-hmm. So there's dolphins out there and there's sharks out there. And the sharks out there are those who are really not doing what's best for their clients. Mm-hmm. Recently in our industry, as you probably are aware, I know you're aware, there's been a shift. And that shift is that folks are now looking for somebody who is going to be a teacher, someone who's going to be a teacher that's going to explain the risks and the rewards that come with everything that we do. And that's a key, I think. The reason I say teacher is because there is no perfect financial plan. There's no perfect investment. There's no magical product out there. Every time you say, I'm going to take $1 and I'm going to allocate it towards X, I just lost the opportunity, number one, to allocate it towards, Y and Z. Mm-hmm. And that lost opportunity means that I better decide correctly and make sure that the risk that I'm taking, the rewards that I'm getting make the most sense. And this is a complicated thing that once the light bulb goes off, once you understand what it is that you have to deal with, once you understand the definitions and how everything interplays, it all makes sense. It starts to fit together. Getting there, though, is difficult. It's kind of like when you first started to learn how to drive a car. There's so many things going on, and you probably are old enough, I know I'm old enough, that I used to drive a stick shift.
Oh, yeah.
And if you don't want your car stolen by a millennial, just buy a stick shift and leave it unlocked. Now, you or I may steal someone's car, because we can actually drive one, but a millennial, it's safe, right?
Yeah.
Well, when you're driving a stick shift, it just, I don't know about you, but for me, it was just humiliating to try to grind gears and not run people over. And I grew up in a small town out in the middle of nowhere, so we had the luxury of running over stop signs and no one noticed,
Mm-hmm.
But I can't imagine what it's like, by the way, to drive in a big city and be 16 years old. Anyways, the point is at some point, I don't know when, it just kind of happened. I kind of got how to shift. I understood how to take a corner. I understood that I had to have my lights on. I had to use my turn signal. Mm-hmm. I got so good at driving that I started driving faster and faster and started getting speeding tickets. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just kind of how it works. And that's how it can work when it comes to your financial plan. It starts out uncomfortable and it starts out, herky jerky. And all of a sudden you're cruising. And you're like, oh, I get it. I get what's happening. And you may never understand, like for me with my car, I don't understand what's happening when I press the button and the car turns on. I don't understand exactly everything that's going on. Don't get me wrong. I can't even change my own oil. Cars today are so crazy, advanced. But I understand enough now that when I get into my car, I'm confident and I know it can take me where I want to go. And when that light comes on for a client, and I engage them as a fiduciary, putting their education and their needs at the forefront, that's what gets me up in the morning. That's what motivates me.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And another example of that is the fact that most cars have GPS now. And so we rely on that so much, we don't pull out the paper map anymore. We don't plot our route. We just say, okay, this is where I want to go. Car, please take me there. And it does a great job of that. And if we just follow that blindly, sometimes we've gone to the same street, but on the opposite side of the city, because it's just, they have the same one, but one's south, one's north, or one's east and one's west. And so to be able to check that guidance to make sure we're still on the right path, that's not just a one and done thing. You're kind of constantly monitoring that. And that's kind of what I hear from you, is that you're along for the ride with your client, helping to guide them and make sure that path is still the right path they need to be on.
You're exactly right. And there's one thing that I forgot to mention, and that is one of the things that gets me motivated is I love living vicariously through my clients. So I've got clients, 70-year-old grandmas who are enjoying retirement. Mm-hmm. I've got 40-year-old doctors who are starting their career, and really building up their business. And like you said, I'm in it for the long haul, and I get to see life happen and live life with them. It's very exciting to go through these different phases, these different forks in the road, and check in and see how we're doing and get those progress reports. And that's the important of a financial plan that's not a one size fits all, that really it's all about you.
Yeah.
It's all about you.
So as you're watching these clients and seeing their experiences and moving down this path with them, what are you seeing that gets them motivated?
I would say what gets them motivated, first off, is when the lights come on. Mm-hmm. The education process of saying, here is how the game is played. Here are the risks, the rewards. Here are the players and the actors on the stage. People start realizing that there's more to it. There's more to investing than putting my dollar in a 401k, crossing my fingers and hoping it goes up. And one thing I've noticed about people is they realize that they've always been suspicious. They've always been suspicious of the financial services industry. They've always been suspicious of the financial services industry because it's as though we speak a foreign language. Mm-hmm. And when we can say things like standard deviation and diversification, if we can say it in a way that makes sense, that applies, then it becomes no longer this Greek word to them. It becomes something that they can use and understand. And what used to be a stumbling block now becomes a stepping stone. Mm-hmm. And you'll remember, going back to the 9/11 analogy, one of the things that Donald Rumsfeld said was that we have these, known unknowns and we have these unknown unknowns. Everybody, I think, rightfully so, when it comes to financial planning and the financial service industry, they're suspicious that there's more to it than we thought. Mm-hmm. And I love going deeper with folks and saying, here is what's happening behind the scenes, and here is how we're going to overcome those things that could get in our way, those factors that could be a stumbling block, and how we're going to make them stepping stones. And when we have those conversations, people get excited. My favorite thing is when people do the analysis on where they are and where they want to be, and they can see, hey, I think I'm going to make it. Mm-hmm. There's some things I got to change. It's not going to be all rainbows and butterflies, but I think I can make it. And when they see that, and then that light comes on, that's what gets people motivated. It's kind of funny. There is a study that was done back in 2010, and I'll have to put it on my blog, the reference to it, but it was talking about vacation. And what they found was that when people rated their happiness, the happiness that people had was actually, well, let me ask you what you might think, Eric. The happiness that you have when you're about to have a vacation, is it before, during, or after the vacation? What they did with the study is they asked them before the vacation, how happy are you? During the vacation, how happy are you? And after the vacation, how happy are you? What is your guess? What do you think people rate it as the highest amount of happiness?
I would hope that it would be during the vacation, right? I mean, that's the hope, is that you're happiest during that vacation. But I'm going to say it's probably in the planning.
You, my friend, are wise beyond your years. That's exactly right.
Because the excitement, right?
Sense.
I mean, you're building excitement. Oh boy, this is what I'm looking forward to. And then some things can go wrong on the vacation, but it's all how it wraps up and all how you plan it out. And yeah, I would say the planning for sure.
Yeah. And this is obviously anecdotal, but in my situation, have you ever, well, maybe you're the same way. Have you ever noticed how when you're planning for a vacation, you get so much done in that week before you leave for a week at the beach?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. You get so much done that week before the beach because, well, you have no other choice. You have something that is pulling you forward. You have your why. Why am I going to put gas in the car? Why am I going to get a haircut? Why am I going to mow the lawn? Why am I, you do so many things, whereas in a normal day, you're like, oh, got to get a haircut. Oh, got to put gas in the car. There's something that's pulling you forward, if you will.
Yeah.
And then also, too, I would say, oftentimes looking back at the vacation, and this is anecdotal, I'm not referencing any, psychological studies. Looking back at the vacation, we say, wow, look at those pictures. What a great time. While we're on the vacation, all we can think about is the long lines at Disney and the fact that, your personal butler didn't bring you the Evian spring water. Of course, that's your kind of vacation, Eric. I'm talking about your, the way you like to vacation, not the rest of us, but,
Yeah, just that's what I like. Yes.
Exactly. So the reason I say that is because in the planning for financial planning, I think there's an analogy there. I think the more engaged you are with your financial plan, the more excitement and the more joy you have in the now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
as you're looking forward to something.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And so financial planning to me is a way to make the right now actually better. And not only better, but to have purpose. So if you have a bad day at work and you know that, hey, I'm going to be here for a while. I see this a lot with state and federal employees in that, 5 years to retirement. It can be a grind. It can be a grind. And when we look at the numbers, especially when it comes to pension planning and the way pensions work, and we look at the amount of money that they're making and how much money they can put away with their catch-up contributions, it helps them to say, I can deal with working for the government's version of Michael Scott from The Office. I can do this. I can do this, and I can make the most of it because I see a bigger why. And it helps make now better if you're planning. So what gets clients motivated is when the lights come on and they can see those unknown unknowns. What gets clients motivated is when the financial planning creates that why for them, and it's analogous to a vacation planning, and it makes the activity that they're doing now much more bearable because there is a purpose to it. The number one thing I said earlier, that I believe is the biggest problem with financial planning is our own behavior, whether it's our own spending, our own procrastination, whatever it happens to be. And as people do more and more planning and they have that why, they're able to control the things about themselves that before they weren't able to control. The fear, the greed, the consumerism, whatever it happens to be. Anticipation infuses this entire process with a lot of energy. Retiring with why is super important. And in that same book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he talks about what are people going to say at your eulogy. And I remember reading that. And of course, I'm 21 years old. So my eulogy is far off, but I still found it very moving some 20 something years ago, that if you could think to yourself about how we're all buried next to each other and all the money we leave behind is just left behind. If money is just a means to an end, then what's the end? What's the eulogy? What's the story? What's the legacy? What's the bucket list? What's your family going to say? And financial planning is simply living that very best life that you can live and being a steward of the money that makes that life happen. When we sit down and we talk about standard deviation, alpha and beta, and Roth conversions, I get it. It's not that exciting. It is exciting, actually. Saving on taxes is awesome. Everybody loves that. But at the end of the day, man, it's about living your dreams. and being that person that you said you were going to be when you were 21 years old, reading a book in college. So
yeah, absolutely. And being on a war footing, like you said, that's the important part, being ready, getting in there.
Yeah, I think being a passive participant in your financial life is such a, what's the word I'm looking for? It just takes the winds out of your sail. It's such a downer.
Yeah.
To be like, well, this is what this is what you do. You put your money here, you do this, you buy that. No, let's be on a war footing. Let's go out there and get after it. Let's be aware of our surroundings. Let's be circumspect, and let's apply ourselves. And that means, in my humble opinion, hiring a financial teacher that'll help you fill in the blind spots, help you make rational decisions based upon facts. I want to see people dream. I want to see them imagine what they'll say at their eulogy. And I want them to go and design that life, not just financial planning, but getting that return on lifestyle. That's really what it's all about.
I agree, 100%. Ray, this has been an excellent podcast, and I appreciate all the info and insights that you've given us today. Can you give us a preview of what the next podcast is going to be?
We're going to talk about the financial war that you may or may not be aware that you're in, who your enemies are, what your weapons are, and what you got to watch out for.
That sounds exciting, man. I'm looking forward to it. All right. Thank you all for listening to the Return on Lifestyle podcast with Ray Descalso. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Ray comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. And for those of you that have friends and family out there that need to be on a war footing, let them know about the next podcast too. Thanks again for listening. For everyone at Privada Wealth Management, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Return on Lifestyle podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. Hosted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Privada Wealth Management. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider for any questions you may have regarding your investment planning. The following program is sponsored by Privada Wealth Management, which is solely responsible for its content. Securities offered through J.W. Cole, financial member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice advisors are unaffiliated entities. The opinions expressed by Ray Descalso should not be construed as specific investment, legal, or tax advice. All economic and performance information is historical and not indicative of future results. Investing may involve the risk of loss of principal. Any tax advice on this show is not intended to be used by any person for the purpose of avoiding U.S. federal or state tax penalties that may be imposed on such person, and each listener should seek advice from their tax advisor or legal counsel on topics that arise from the show. Ray Descalso is not providing legal or tax advice. Nothing should be construed as solicitation of an offer to buy securities. The preceding program is sponsored by Privada Wealth Management, which is solely responsible for its content.